I should have known it was going to be a night full of bugs when I spotted swarms of flying ants congregating around the street lighting. There is a night once every few months called Bugs Night, and on that night, if there was even the tiniest crack in the home, by 7 o'clock there will be hundreds of writhing and dying bugs on the floor. Bugs Night is also known as Bug Night. I didn't want to spend the entire evening pulling fast-moving bugs out of my hair, so I ran home to shut all the windows as soon as I could. I switched off all of the lights to prevent any creepy crawlies from being drawn in by the illumination. I had nothing to do after it became dark, so I decided to get an early start on my sleep. About 1 in the morning, I was startled awake by the sound of J-O-F, 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 slurp, slurp, slurp. I was taken aback by that. As I removed my headphones, which had cables at the time, I was astonished to see that my body gave the impression that there was an additional cord attached to it. The fact that it was thicker than a headphone wire and had an organic touch similar to that of a string bean was unsettling to me as I fumbled around in the dark, attempting to get a feel for anything that resembled a small cord. As I noticed that one end of it was glued to my neck, it made the situation much more unsettling for me. I sprang to my feet as soon as I felt it and ran away from the room. I was curious about what exactly this organic rope item was, so I hurriedly switched on the lamp that was next to my bed. It appeared to be a cable that was black in color. It was fastened around my neck, but I couldn't immediately locate the other end of it in the immediate vicinity. One end was linked to my neck. At first, I didn't feel any pain, up to the point where I started pulling on it. As I attempted to pull it off, I felt it much more strongly. After then, I heard the sound once again. J-O-F, 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 slurp, slurp, slurp. I was repulsed and on the verge of having a complete nervous breakdown as a result of what I saw. When I followed this cord, it took me to a small opening in the window that led to an exterior balcony. The opposite end of the cable was situated in the open air. Although it was 1 in the morning, the sky was totally dark outside. I took a slow, deep breath and turned on the light on the balcony, unsure of what was about to happen. After then, I was finally able to notice it. It was a gigantic humanoid figure that was completely nude and had the face of an elderly man with white hair that was long and disheveled. He was squatting down to sit, but if he stood up, he could have been able to reach a height of up to 8 feet. The size of his head was significantly larger than that of a typical human's. The only thing that covered his skeleton was a thin layer of skin. The position in which he sat made him appear to be a colossal spider crab. His eyes were enormous, about the size of ostrich eggs, and they were pitch black in color. But the most offensive feature was his mouth. It looked like a tube. The tube was first straight, but soon coiled itself into a cord. It was this cord that passed through the aperture and eventually became linked to my neck. The tube had initially been straight. The cheeks of the elderly guy began to swiftly deflate and then reinflate all of a sudden. After then, I once again became aware of that sound. J-O-F, 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 slurp, slurp, slurp. After a few seconds, I could feel the blood leaving my neck and going downward my chest. That wasn't painful, but you could definitely feel it. Similar to how the initial prick and pushing that occurs during a blood draw at a hospital caused the discomfort rather than the subsequent emptying of the blood. This elderly man was drawing blood from me. He has his mouth pressed against my neck like a straw, and he is drinking my blood. I was able to sense the movement of liquid inside the black wire. I had the want to scream, but I couldn't since I was in such a state of shock. Then, I recalled a neighbor who lived 3 houses down from me and passed away in her home on the final night the bugs were out. The authorities stated that practically all of her blood had been removed, but they did not know who was responsible or how it was done. Because the act of this monster taking her blood included no discomfort for her, it is likely that she had no idea what had happened to her. I began to feel lightheaded, which is a common side effect of suffering significant blood loss. I looked around the room for anything pointed that I could use. I had to get moving quickly before my brain had completed digesting everything, and I was rendered incapable of any further activity. I was able to free my neck by cutting the cable, which I did despite the fact that the entire room was spinning around me once I located a knife. It appeared that the remaining portion of the cord was pulled back out again. After then, the elderly gentleman scuttled laterally like a crab before vanishing into the shadows. I didn't really think about it, but I just got up and went out to the balcony to see what was going on. In spite of the fact that it was dark, the lights from the street lamps enabled me to spot perhaps a dozen of these critters in the field that was located on the other side of the road. These gigantic spider crab-like animals with the faces of elderly people scuttled backwards into the Appalachian Blue Ridge woodland. I had the want to yell at the top of my lungs, but I didn't want to wake up the people who lived nearby. I was aware that I needed to get better at closing off all of the entrances to my home, because it is quite possible that these things will return during the next night while bugs are out.